May 7th, 1863. Dear Diary, I returned to Washington expecting to coordinate our defenses. Instead, I found my wife in chains and a message that said, "Choose Mary's life or America's future." The journey back from Richmond had been tense but uneventful. Rose and Hamilton had guided me through smuggler routes, and by dawn we'd reached the outskirts of Washington. Everything seemed normal. Too normal, I realized in retrospect. The White House appeared exactly as I'd left it. Guards at their posts, staff going about their duties, no visible sign of crisis. But the moment I entered my private study, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. On my desk sat a single photograph that made my blood run cold. It showed Mary, bound to a chair in what appeared to be a basement or cellar. Her face was bruised, her dress torn, but her eyes burned with defiant fury. Standing behind her, barely visible in the shadows, were three men wearing the organization's medallions. Beside the photograph was a note in elegant handwriting. "Mr. President, your trip to Richmond was noted with great interest. We admire your initiative, though it was ultimately futile. Mrs. Lincoln and 23 members of Mr. Harrison's faction are now in our custody. You have until midnight tonight to make a choice. Surrender yourself for public trial and execution as a traitor who conspired with the Confederacy, or watch your wife die slowly while we proceed with our May 15th operation. Choose wisely." The foundation. What would you do in Lincoln's position? Save your wife or save the nation? My hands trembled as I read the note. They had Mary. They had Harrison's people. And they positioned it as an impossible choice, my life and reputation for Mary's survival, but allowing the organization to proceed with their plan to shatter America. Hamilton burst into the study moments later, his face pale. "Sir, they took her while you were gone. Lady Ashford, Elizabeth Van Lew, Rose's entire network, everyone associated with our counter-operation. It was coordinated, simultaneous raids across Washington." "How many total?" I asked, my voice hollow. 37 that we know of. They hit safe houses we thought were secret, intercepted communications we thought were secure. Sir, they knew everything. Every move we planned, every person we recruited. "We have a mole," I said, the horrible realization settling over me. Someone close enough to know all our plans, all our people. Someone who's been feeding information to the Foundation since we started this counter-operation. Stanton arrived next, his expression grim. "Mr. President, there's more. Secretary Chase is demanding an emergency cabinet meeting. He's claiming you've been conducting unauthorized negotiations with the Confederacy and should be removed from office for treason." So that was their play. The organization would use my meeting with Davis, which was meant to save both our nations, as evidence of treason. They'd remove me from power legally, through constitutional means, while simultaneously holding Mary hostage to ensure I didn't resist. "Is Tad safe?" I asked, sudden panic gripping me. "Yes, sir. We have him in a secure location with loyal guards. But Mr. President, the cabinet meeting is mandatory. If you don't attend, Chase will argue you've abandoned your duties." I looked at the photograph of Mary again. Her bruised face, her defiant eyes. She'd spent a year building an intelligence network to protect me, had risked everything to fight the organization, and now she was paying the price for my decisions. But then I noticed something in the photograph that gave me a thread of hope. Mary's hands, bound behind her back, were positioned in a specific way. Her fingers were making shapes, not random, but deliberate. She was signaling something using a code we developed years ago for private communication at public events. I grabbed a magnifying glass, studying her hand positions more carefully. Letter by letter, I decoded her message. "NOTHINGTONHOTLBESCMENT. The Nothington Hotel. An old, mostly abandoned building near the warehouse district." Mary was telling me where they were holding her. "Hamilton Rose," I said quickly. "I need you to investigate the Nothington Hotel basement. Discreetly. If Mary's being held there, we need to know the building layout, guard positions, everything." "And the cabinet meeting?" Stanton asked. "I'll attend. Let Chase make his accusations. While he's focused on me, we'll be planning Mary's rescue." The cabinet meeting was exactly as hostile as I'd expected. Chase sat at the head of the table, unusually confident, with several other secretaries looking uncomfortable but supportive. "Gentlemen," Chase began, I've called this emergency session because evidence has come to light that President Lincoln has been conducting secret negotiations with Jefferson Davis and the Confederate government. This constitutes treason and grounds for immediate removal from office. Seward, whom I still wasn't certain about, shifted uncomfortably. Those are serious charges, Salmon. What evidence do you have? Chase produced documents, reports from reliable sources, describing my journey to Richmond, my meeting with Davis, even details of our conversation with Lee. The organization had documented everything. Mr. President, Chase said, his voice dripping with false concern, do you deny meeting with Jefferson Davis in Richmond 3 days ago? I could lie. I could claim the documents were forgeries, that I'd been in Washington the entire time. But lies would only give them more power. I don't deny it, I said calmly. The room erupted. Several secretaries shouted in shock, others in anger. Chase held up his hand for silence, barely concealing his satisfaction. Then you admit to treason? To consorting with the enemy while this nation is at war? Like if you think Lincoln should reveal the truth about the organization. I admit to meeting with President Davis, but not for the reasons you're suggesting. Salmon. I met with him because both our governments have been infiltrated by a conspiracy that wants us to keep fighting, keep killing each other, until we're both too weak to resist foreign domination. Conspiracy theories, Chase scoffed. The desperate defense of a man caught in treason. Is it? I pulled out copies of the documents we'd found in the Library of Congress archives. Then explained these genealogical files tracking American families for centuries. Explained the financial records showing European banking houses paying American politicians to prolong the war. Explain your own medallion. Salmon, the one you wear under your shirt, the one that marks you as a member of the foundation. Chase's confident expression flickered for just a moment, and that's when I knew I'd struck home. I don't know what you're talking about, Chase said, but his hand moved instinctively toward his chest, toward where the medallion hung beneath his clothing. Show them, I said. Show the cabinet the medallion you carry. Let them see the symbol that marks you as part of the organization that killed my son, that's planning to assassinate me and Jefferson Davis on May 15th, that's been manipulating American politics for 200 years. Seward stood up. Salmon, if what the president says is true, if there's even a possibility. There's no possibility, Chase said quickly. These are fabrications designed to distract from Lincoln's actual treason. But I saw doubt spreading among the cabinet members. They'd heard whispers of conspiracy, seen strange patterns in war financing, noticed odd coincidences in military intelligence failures. Gentlemen, I said, addressing the room, I know this sounds incredible, but I have documentation, testimony from organization defectors, and most importantly, I have Secretary Chase's own words from the Baltimore meeting, recorded by witnesses. Chase's face went pale. He hadn't known we'd had people recording the Baltimore meeting, hadn't known we'd documented his presentation of the American solution. This cabinet meeting is over, Chase said, standing abruptly. I'm calling for a congressional investigation into the president's fitness for office. By all means, I replied calmly. And while Congress investigates, I'll be presenting all this evidence to them. Every document, every testimony, every piece of proof that you and your organization have been manipulating this war. Chase stormed out, followed by 2 other secretaries who were clearly also organization members. The remaining cabinet members sat in stunned silence. After the others left, Stanton closed the door and looked at me seriously. Sir, that was a tremendous risk. If Chase moves quickly, he could have you arrested before we can build a legal defense. Chase won't move quickly. He needs to consult with the foundation, get new orders now that his plan has been exposed. That buys us time. Time for what? Time to rescue Mary and the others. Time to prepare for May 15th. Time to finish what we started. Hamilton returned with Rose, both looking excited. We found the hotel. Mary's signal was accurate. There's a basement complex, heavily guarded. We counted at least 15 organization operatives. Can we assault it? I asked. Rose shook her head. Not without significant casualties. They're professional soldiers, well-armed, and positioned defensively. A frontal assault would likely result in them killing the hostages before we could reach them. But then Stanton suggested something I'd never considered, using Confederate help. Sir, if General Lee is truly allied with us against the organization, couldn't he provide troops? Confederate soldiers operating in Washington would be unexpected. The organization wouldn't know how to respond. It was brilliant and audacious. You're suggesting we bring Confederate troops into Washington to rescue my wife from an organization that controls parts of our own military? I'm suggesting we use every resource available. Lee has men loyal to him personally, men who'd follow his orders even if those orders seemed unconventional. I thought about my conversation with Lee in Richmond. He'd committed to helping stop the organization. Would he go this far? Contact Lee through the secure channels Davis provided. I said, ask if he can spare a covert team, maybe 20 men, who can operate in Union territory without insignia or identification. While Hamilton arranged the communication with Lee, I studied the hotel blueprints Rose had obtained. The basement was a maze of rooms and corridors, perfect for defense, but also creating opportunities for infiltration. We need someone on the inside, I said. Someone the organization trusts, who can sabotage their defenses from within. Rose smiled grimly. I think I know someone. Edward Hamilton has been playing both sides for so long that the organization still thinks he's one of theirs. They might let him deliver a message to Mary, an offer of clemency if she reveals information. It was risky. If the organization had discovered Hamilton's true loyalty, they'd kill him on sight. But it was our best chance. Hamilton returned from sending the message to Lee and listened to our plan. His face showed no fear, only grim determination. I'll go. But you should know. If they've compromised our communications, if they know I've turned, this will be a one-way trip. We can find another way, I said, not wanting to send a man to certain death. No, sir. Mary saved my life when she could have turned me over to military justice. This is my chance to repay that debt. I gripped his hand. If you can get inside, signal us when the defenses are weakest. We'll move immediately with whatever forces we have. Hamilton nodded and left to prepare. After he was gone, Rose spoke quietly. He's not coming back, you know. The organization will either kill him as a traitor or hold him as another hostage. Share this if you think Hamilton is the real hero of this story. I know, I said. But Mary would do the same for any of us. She's built her entire network on the principle that some things are worth dying for. May 8th, 1863, 2 a.m. Dear Diary, I write these words while waiting for Hamilton's signal, not knowing if he's alive or dead, not knowing if Mary is still unharmed, not knowing if this desperate plan will work or if I'm sending good people to die for my decisions. Chase has filed formal charges of treason with Congress. By morning, there will be calls for my arrest and trial. The organization is moving on multiple fronts: legal action to remove me from power, physical force to hold my wife hostage, and their May 15th assassination plan proceeding regardless of everything else. I've sent word to Davis through our secure channel, informing him of the situation. His response was unexpected. Whatever you need. Our alliance is firm. Lee's men are being prepared for covert insertion into Washington. Confederate soldiers coming to Washington to rescue the Union president's wife from an organization trying to destroy both our nations. If someone had told me a month ago this would happen, I'd have thought them insane. But then a messenger arrived with news that made everything even more complicated. A young soldier, barely 20, burst into my study. Mr. President, there's been an incident at Ford's Theater. A fire, sir. Several casualties. My heart sank. Ford's Theater, one of Mary's favorite places, where we'd attended performances together, where Willie had loved to watch the actors. How bad? 3 dead, 7 injured. But sir, that's not the worst part. We found evidence the fire was deliberately set. And in the wreckage, we found these. He handed me several charred documents. Organization communications, partially burned but still legible. Instructions for May 15th, backup assassination protocols, and most damning, a list of targets beyond just Davis and me. The list included Supreme Court justices, state governors, military commanders, prominent abolitionists, and influential Southern planters. The organization wasn't just planning to kill 2 presidents. They were planning to decapitate American leadership entirely. This changes everything, Stanton said, reading over my shoulder. If we can prove they're planning to assassinate dozens of American leaders, we can mobilize resources on a scale that would overwhelm any defenses the Foundation has. But it also means Mary and the others are in more immediate danger, Rose pointed out. If the organization knows we've found this evidence, They might decide the hostages are more useful dead as a warning than alive as leverage. She was right. Every minute we delayed was a minute the organization could decide to cut their losses and eliminate everyone who knew too much. At 3 a.m., Hamilton's signal came. A single lantern lit in a specific window of the Nothington Hotel, the sign that he'd successfully infiltrated and sabotaged the interior defenses. "We move now," I said. "Stanton, coordinate with Lee's team. Rose, guide our forces. I'm going in personally." "Sir, that's not negotiable. Mary is my wife. I'm not sending others to risk their lives while I wait safely in the White House." But as we approached the hotel, we discovered Hamilton's signal was actually a warning. A trap was waiting inside. Lee's Confederate team arrived at the designated meeting point, 20 men in civilian clothes, led by a grizzled colonel who looked skeptical about the entire mission. "General Lee ordered us to follow your commands, Mr. President," the colonel said. "But I'll be honest, this feels like madness." "It is madness," I agreed. "But it's necessary madness." We approached the Nothington Hotel from 3 directions: Stanton's Union forces from the east, Lee's Confederate team from the west, and Rose's intelligence operatives from the north. I went with Rose's group, despite everyone's protests. The hotel appeared quiet, almost abandoned. Too quiet. "This is wrong," Rose whispered. "Hamilton's signal should have cleared the exterior guards, but I can feel eyes watching us." We were 50 feet from the entrance when the doors burst open and organization operatives poured out. Not 15 as we'd estimated, but at least 40. They'd been reinforced, waiting for our rescue attempt. "Ambush!" someone shouted. Gunfire erupted. I dove behind a water trough as bullets tore through the air around me. Lee's Confederate soldiers engaged from one side, Stanton's Union forces from another. The organization operatives, caught between 2 attacking forces, fell back toward the hotel. But they'd achieved their goal. They'd forced us into open combat, creating chaos that would alert every organization member in Washington. Whatever element of surprise we'd hoped for was gone. Rose grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a side entrance. While they're focused on the main fight, we go through the servants' entrance. "Find Mary, get her out." We slipped through the chaos, entering the hotel through a narrow door that opened into what had once been the kitchen. The interior was dark, lit only by occasional lanterns. From above and below, we could hear shouts, gunfire, the sounds of fighting spreading through the building. The basement stairs were just ahead when a figure emerged from the shadows. Chase, holding a pistol aimed directly at my chest. "I should have known you'd come personally," Chase said. "Always the noble martyr, Lincoln. Always putting yourself at risk for others." "Where's Mary, Salmon?" "She's exactly where she needs to be, as leverage against your interference. The Foundation has decided that keeping you alive but powerless serves their interests better than killing you and making you a martyr." "So you'll hold Mary hostage to control me?" "Precisely. You'll remain president in name, but every decision will be filtered through the understanding that Mary's safety depends on your cooperation. A puppet president, exactly what the organization prefers." "I could shoot you right now," I said quietly. "End this." "You could. But the moment I don't report in, the orders go out to kill all the hostages. Mary dies, Harrison dies, all 37 prisoners die. Is that the choice you want to make?" He was right, and we both knew it. Killing Chase wouldn't save Mary, it would doom her. "There's another option," Rose said from beside me. "Chase lives, but he tells us exactly where Mary is being held and how to reach her safely." Chase laughed. "Why would I do that?" Rose pulled out a small vial from her coat. "Because I have the antidote to the poison you ingested at the Baltimore meeting. You remember that champagne you drank? Rose Greenow's special recipe, slow-acting, undetectable until symptoms appear, always fatal without treatment." Chase's confident expression crumbled. "You're bluffing." "Am I? When was the last time you felt truly well, Salmon? Those headaches you've been having? The occasional dizziness? The strange tingling in your extremities? Those are early symptoms. You have maybe 72 hours before organ failure begins." "Do you think Rose is bluffing or telling the truth?" I had no idea if Rose was telling the truth or creating an elaborate bluff. But watching Chase's face, seeing the fear that replaced his confidence, I realized it didn't matter. He believed her, and belief was enough. "The antidote," Chase said hoarsely. "Give it to me, and I'll tell you everything." "Tell us first," Rose countered. "Prove you're being truthful, and then you get the treatment. Chase hesitated, calculating. Then, sub-basement, third level down. There's a hidden room behind the old wine cellar. Mary and the others are being held there. 15 guards, rotating shifts every 4 hours. Access. Service elevator at the south end, requires a key. He pulled a key from his pocket and tossed it to Rose. But you should know, the room is rigged to flood if anyone tries to breach it without proper authorization. The Foundation values secrecy over hostages. We left Chase tied up in the kitchen and moved quickly toward the service elevator. Fighting still raged on the upper floors, but we encountered no resistance as we descended into the sub-basement. The third level down was cold, damp, clearly built long before the hotel above it. These were old tunnels, possibly from Revolutionary War era, converted into a prison. The wine cellar was exactly where Chase had said, and behind a false wall, we found a reinforced door with a complex locking mechanism. This could take hours to pick, Rose said, examining the lock. We don't have hours. I studied the door, looking for weaknesses. That's when I noticed the hinges, exposed, old, possibly corroded. We don't pick the lock. We remove the door from its hinges. It took 10 precious minutes to remove the corroded pins from the hinges. As the door swung free, we entered a large room illuminated by lanterns and found exactly what Chase had described. Mary, Harrison, and 36 others, all chained to walls or posts. But in the center of the room, on the floor, lay Edward Hamilton. He was alive, but badly beaten, blood pooling beneath him. He tried to free us, Mary said immediately, seeing my expression. They caught him, beat him, but he bought us time. Abraham, he's been telling the organization lies, feeding them false information while secretly weakening their defenses. Hamilton opened his eyes as I knelt beside him. Did it work? The signal. It worked. We're here. Good. Tell my family. Tell them I chose right. Finally chose right. His eyes closed. Rose checked for a pulse, shook her head. Hamilton had given his life to save Mary and the others, had finally found redemption for his years of serving the organization. We didn't have time to mourn. Guards would discover our breach any moment. Rose and I worked quickly, using Hamilton's key ring to unlock the chains. Mary threw her arms around me the moment she was free. You came. I knew you'd come. Always, I said. Now we need to move. The building is compromised, fighting on every level. There's something else, Harrison said, his voice urgent. While we were captive, they brought someone else in. Someone the organization is terrified of. Who? Jefferson Davis. My blood ran cold. Davis is here? In Washington? That's impossible. They captured him yesterday, Mary explained quickly. Used the same intelligence network that caught us. Abraham, they have both presidents now. If they kill us both here, tonight, they don't need to wait until May 15th. The organization had adapted their plan. Instead of elaborate simultaneous explosions, they'd opted for something simpler. Capture both presidents, kill them together, blame it on the chaos of war. Where is Davis? I demanded. Harrison pointed to a locked door at the far end of the room. Through there? But Abraham, it's a trap. They're waiting for you to try and rescue him. They want both of you in the same place. I had perhaps 30 seconds to decide. Take Mary and the others and escape while we could, leaving Davis to die. Or attempt a rescue that would likely get all of us killed. Mary read my expression. You can't leave him, can you? Even though he's your enemy. Even though letting him die would end the Confederacy's resistance. If I leave him, the organization wins. They'll have proven that American leaders will sacrifice each other to save themselves. That's exactly the principle they want to establish. Then we go together, Mary said firmly. All of us. The 37 freed prisoners, exhausted and beaten, nevertheless prepared to fight. Because they understood what was at stake. Not just lives, but the very principle that Americans could trust each other, could work together, could be something more than the organization's puppets. We breached the door leading to Davis's cell. The room beyond was exactly as Harrison had warned, filled with organization operatives, all armed, all waiting. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed we'd come alone or with a small force. They hadn't expected 37 prisoners, suddenly freed and fighting with the desperate fury of people who'd seen the enemy's true face. The battle was brutal and close quarters. I'm not a soldier, but I fought alongside men and women who'd become fighters out of necessity. Rose was a demon with a blade. Mary wielded a guard's dropped pistol with deadly precision. Harrison coordinated our attacks despite his injuries. And in the center of the room, chained but defiant, Jefferson Davis watched the chaos with calculating eyes. We reached him as the last organization operative fell or fled. I personally broke the chains holding him. "Mr. Lincoln," Davis said, his voice hoarse but steady, "this is twice now you've saved my life. I'm beginning to think the universe is trying to tell us something. That we're stronger together than apart." I suggested. "Something like that." We fought our way out of the sub-basement, joining with Stanton and Lee's forces who'd secured the upper floors. The organization operatives had been driven off or captured, but at significant cost. A dozen Union and Confederate soldiers lay dead or wounded. As dawn broke over Washington, I stood outside the Nothington Hotel with Jefferson Davis, Mary, Rose, Stanton, and what remained of our alliance. Confederate soldiers and Union forces stood together, not as enemies, but as allies against a common threat. "We have 7 days until May 15th, Davis said. 7 days to find the Foundation's headquarters, disable their remaining operations, and prevent whatever backup plans they've prepared." "Then we don't waste a moment," I replied. May 8th, 1863, dawn. Dear Diary, Hamilton is dead. 12 good soldiers are dead. But Mary is alive. Davis is alive. And the alliance holds. The organization tried to break us by taking what we loved most. They tried to force impossible choices between personal loyalties and national duties. They believed that self-interest would always trump principle, that leaders would sacrifice allies to save themselves. They were wrong. Tonight, Union and Confederate forces fought side by side. A Confederate spy gave her life's work to save a Union president. A former organization operative died to redeem his past betrayals. And 2 presidents who should be enemies stood together against those who would make all Americans slaves to foreign interests. 7 days remain. The final battle approaches. But finding the Foundation's headquarters would require decoding messages hidden in the one place we'd never thought to look. The letters Mary had received from her Confederate family. Letters that contained the location of the organization's true power center.